My sister smiled at her rehearsal dinner and said, "Tell everyone your Navy nickname," thinking she'd humiliate me in front of her new family. But when I said Riptide, the groom's 74-year-old uncle froze, put down his glass, and ordered her to apologize before anyone even understood why. She was already laughing before I answered. That was the first thing I noticed. Brianna had raised her champagne glass and aimed her smile across the table at me, the kind of smile she'd been perfecting since we were 7 years old, and she was already laughing, before the words were even out of her mouth, before I'd had a chance to react. That's how you know it's premeditated. "Tell everyone your Navy nickname," she said. 30 people turned to look at me. Brianna's future mother-in-law, Derek's cousins from Portland, his business partners from the firm, Tessa, her maid of honor, who was already pressing her lips together like she was trying not to break too early, the banquet manager near the door who'd gone very still, and across the room, because I only noticed him later, when it mattered, one older man with white hair and a straight back who had stopped mid-sip and was watching me with an expression I couldn't read yet. I looked at my sister. She was glowing. White dress, soft curls, champagne fizzing in the light. She'd spent months planning this weekend, the venues, the menus, the seating charts, the toasts, every detail calibrated, including this one. "Come on," she said louder. "Don't make it weird." And I thought, there it is. That was always her trick. Corner someone, then blame them for the walls. I folded my hands on the table. I said one word, Riptide. You need to understand something about Brianna and me before any of this makes sense. We grew up in Greenfield, Ohio, in a house that was too small for the arguments our family managed to generate. My mother, Diane, was a paralegal who believed in keeping the peace above everything else, above honesty, above fairness, above her own comfort. My father left when I was 9 and Brianna was 12, and after that, maintaining the illusion of a happy family became Diane's full-time occupation. Brianna understood this early. She figured out that if she smiled at the right moments and blamed problems on other people quickly enough, she could avoid almost any consequence. She was charming and quick and beautiful, and people wanted to believe her. Teachers, boys, extended family members who only saw us at Christmas. Me, I was the stubborn one, the one who wouldn't let things go, the one who made things complicated by refusing to pretend nothing had happened. By the time I was 17, that dynamic had a name in our household, Monica being difficult. I enlisted in the Navy at 19, not out of desperation. I'd had a partial scholarship to Ohio State waiting, but because I wanted to belong to something that required me to be exactly who I was. No performance, no maintenance, just work and competence and truth. The Navy gave me that. It also gave me the nickname. I was stationed aboard the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower for my first deployment, working as an aviation boatswain's mate, the people responsible for the choreography of flight deck operations, which is the most dangerous working environment in the world outside of active combat. There is no margin for hesitation on a flight deck. You learn to read the situation before it's finished happening. You learn to move without being told. My chief, a 12-year veteran named Petty Officer First Class Marcus Webb, started calling me Riptide about 4 months in. I'd asked him about it once. He was eating a breakfast burrito and barely looked up. "Riptide doesn't fight the water," he said. "It is the water. You can't see it coming and you can't stop it once it's there." He took a bite. "That's you." The name stuck. It wasn't a joke to the people I served with. It was an acknowledgement, a shorthand for something they'd watched me earn. But Brianna had heard the word Riptide the one time I made the mistake of mentioning it during Christmas dinner 3 years ago, and she'd laughed then too. Said it sounded like a soap opera character. Said I was always so dramatic about the military stuff. She didn't know what it meant. She didn't want to. And now she'd decided to turn it into a punchline at her rehearsal dinner, in front of her fiancé's family, in a room full of people who would laugh because she was the bride and brides owned the room. I knew this because I knew Brianna. What I didn't know, what none of us knew, was that Frank Whitmore was sitting across that room, and that the word Riptide meant something very specific to a former Navy corpsman from another generation entirely. Second, the laughter started the moment the word left my mouth. Brianna burst out first, that bright, performative laugh she reserved for audiences, and then the table rippled. Derek's cousins, a few of his coworkers, even Tessa, who glanced at me apologetically even as she smiled. "Riptide?" Brianna said. "That sounds like a rejected superhero name." More laughter. Someone at the far end of the table repeated it, "Riptide." "What was the other option?" Brianna continued, clearly in her element now, riding the wave of 30 people's attention. "Commander kept in spreadsheet." The table loved that one. I sat still, hands folded, shoulders level, face neutral. The Navy teaches you that too. There are moments on a flight deck when everything goes wrong simultaneously, when the wind shifts, when a cable snags, when an aircraft's trajectory becomes suddenly, catastrophically unpredictable. And the worst thing you can do is let your body announce your panic before your brain has finished solving the problem. So you learn stillness. You learn to let the storm happen around you while your mind works. I was doing that now. My mother's hand found my forearm under the table. She leaned in and whispered, "Just let it pass." I turned to look at her slowly. "Why?" I said quietly. "Is that always my job?" She didn't answer. She never answered that question, because answering it honestly would require admitting that letting things pass had been her strategy for 30 years, and that it had cost both of us things we couldn't name yet. Brianna was still going. She'd turned to Derek now, using him as a prop in her routine, leaning into his shoulder with exaggerated disbelief. "Can you imagine? They actually called her that." She shook her head. "The military is so—" That was when I heard it. A glass glass, touching the table. Soft, deliberate, the opposite of accidental. I looked across the room. The older man with the white hair had set down his water glass. Both hands now rested flat on the table, and he was looking at my sister with an expression I can only describe as recognition. Not of her, but of something she'd said. Something she'd just accidentally revealed about herself. I didn't know who he was yet. I'd been introduced to approximately 40 members of Derek's extended family and professional circle over the past 24 hours, and the names had blurred, but I noticed his posture, military straight even at 70-something, and I noticed that his face had gone very, very still. Not confused, not offended, recognized. He pushed his chair back. The scrape of chair legs on hardwood cut through the laughter like a knife through screen. Every head turned. The man stood slowly. He wasn't tall anymore. Age compresses people, but when he stood, the entire room reorganized itself around him in a way that had nothing to do with height and everything to do with something else. Something that people who've spent their lives in service carry in their posture. He looked directly at my sister. "Apologize," he said. Third. The word landed in total silence. Brianna blinked. Champagne glass still raised. Smile still in place, but frozen now. Confused. "What?" she said. "Apologize." His voice was calm. Now. It didn't rise. It didn't crack. There was no theatrics in it. No performance. No anger. And that, I think, was what made it terrifying. Anger you can dismiss. Calm like that you cannot. Brianna forced a laugh. "Uncle Frank, come on. It was just a joke." Uncle Frank. Derek's uncle. I filed that away. "No," Frank said. "It wasn't." Brianna looked around the table. It was a reflex. The same thing she'd always done. The thing our mother had trained both of us to read automatically. The find an ally scan. Look for the face that will smile back. Look for the person who will laugh and break the tension and make this okay. She scanned 30 faces. No one smiled. Not Derek. He was looking at his uncle with something like understanding dawning in his expression. Not his parents, who had gone very straight in their chairs. Not the cousins who'd been snickering 2 minutes ago. Not Tessa, who was suddenly deeply interested in her salad. Brianna was alone in the middle of the joke she'd made. "I didn't mean anything by it," she said. Her voice was smaller now. A register I hadn't heard since we were children. Since before she'd learned that volume could substitute for vulnerability. Frank's jaw tightened. "That," he said, "is what people say when they want the damage without the responsibility." Derek shifted in his chair. He leaned slightly toward Tessa, who was sitting 2 seats down. "Tessa," he said quietly, "did Brianna plan this? Before dinner?" Tessa went pale. The word planned sat in the air between them. "Tessa." Derek's voice was careful. "Please." Tessa looked at Brianna. Brianna's eyes found Tessa's across the table, and I watched what passed between them. A whole conversation in about 2 seconds. Don't you dare. I'm asking you as your best friend, as the woman whose bridesmaid's dresses you already paid for. Don't." Tessa looked down at her plate, then she said it anyway. She said the Navy nickname bit would kill. IV. The table went cold. Not quiet, cold. There's a difference. Quiet is absence. Cold is presence. Cold is 30 people simultaneously processing the same information and arriving at the same conclusion, and nobody wanting to be the first one to say it out loud. Brianna's face cracked. It happened in stages, the way things break under pressure. Not all at once, but in a sequence. First the smile went, then the ease left her shoulders. Then something behind her eyes shifted from performance to panic. Derek stood up, slowly. Not dramatically. He didn't push his chair back hard or knock anything over. He just rose from his seat the way you do when you've made a decision and you need your body to confirm it. He didn't shout. He didn't look around to see who was watching. He wasn't doing this for the room. "I need a minute," he said. "You're walking out?" Brianna whispered, taking a minute. During our rehearsal dinner, he looked at her. Not with anger, and I think that was what undid her, that there was no anger in it. Just something quiet and final. The look of someone reassessing something they thought they knew. "Because I don't want to say what I'm thinking in front of everyone," he said. Then he turned to me. "Monica, I'm sorry." He followed Frank out of the room. The door closed softly behind them. Brianna stood at the front of the room. Dress perfect, hair perfect, champagne glass still in her hand, though it had stopped being a prop and become just something she was holding because she didn't know what else to do with herself. The room no longer belonged to her. I've thought about that moment a lot since then, about what it looks like when someone loses a room. It's not what you'd expect. It's not dramatic. It's a kind of subtraction. One by one, without moving, the people around you simply stop being your audience. My mother had her hand over her mouth. I don't know if she was horrified at Brianna or horrified at herself for all the years of just let it pass. Brianna turned to me, and for the first time in the entire evening, maybe the first time in years, honestly, her face was just her face. No performance underneath it. "This is unbelievable," she said. Her voice was small. I picked up my water glass, took a slow sip, set it down. "You knew I said no," I said. I hadn't meant to speak, but the words were there, and I was so tired of swallowing them. "I told you last week," I said. "When you asked if you could mention the Navy stuff during the toasts, I said no. I told you some of those names carry weight. I asked you to trust me." I kept my voice even. I'd learned that from the flight deck too. "You kept going," I said, "because the room was laughing with you." No one moved. "You laughed at the name," I said. "I remember the people attached to it." Brianna's mouth opened. Nothing came out, and into that silence from the doorway came Frank Whitmore's voice. He'd come back into the room, quietly, just inside the door, and I don't know how long he'd been standing there. Long enough, I think. "What did they call you that for?" he asked me, not unkindly, curious, the way someone asks asks when they already suspect the answer. Flight deck operations, I said. USS Eisenhower. My chief said I moved like I could see things before they happened. Frank nodded slowly. Then he said something that changed the temperature of the room again. There was a woman on our support ship in 78, he said. They called her Riptide. Hospital corpsman 2nd class, Catherine Adler. He paused. She pulled 2 men out of a flooding compartment during a systems failure off the coast of Okinawa. Nobody told her to. Nobody had time to. She just moved. He looked at Brianna. We don't give names like that as jokes. The room was absolutely silent. Brianna sat down. 6. My phone buzzed at 11:42 p.m. I was in my hotel room, room 214 at the Hendricks Inn, yellow lamplight, the sound of the fountain in the courtyard outside, eating vending machine crackers because the rehearsal dinner had ended 2 hours early and I hadn't finished my salmon. You embarrassed me in front of Derek's family. I read it twice, set the phone on the nightstand. It buzzed again. I hope you're happy. I looked at the ceiling. I thought about Catherine Adler, hospital corpsman 2nd class, a woman I had never met, flooding compartment off the coast of Okinawa, 1978. I thought about what Frank had looked like when he said her name, the specific, particular weight of it, the way you say the name of someone who saved a life and whose story you've been carrying for 40 years. I thought about my chief, Marcus Webb, handing me a breakfast burrito and saying you can't see it coming and you can't stop it once it's there. I thought about all the times I'd let things pass. I turned the phone face down and went to sleep. 7. The knock came at 7:14 a.m. I know the exact time because I'd been awake since 6, running calculations, how this went, what I was willing to do and what I wasn't, where my lines were, now that I'd finally decided I was allowed to have them. I opened the door. Brianna was in her bridal robe, ivory, monogrammed, the one she'd shown me a photo of 3 months ago when she ordered it. Her makeup was half done, mascara on one eye, foundation stopping at the jawline. She looked like she'd started getting ready and then stopped when she realized there was something more urgent to deal with. I'm sorry if you felt mocked, she said. I looked at her. I looked at her for a long time. That's not an apology, I said. That's a press release. Her jaw tightened. I'm trying. An apology for what you did sounds like. I planned to humiliate you in front of Derek's family. You asked me not to, and I did it anyway because I thought I'd get away with it. That's what happened. That's what you'd be apologizing for. It was one joke. You told Tessa it would kill. I kept my voice level. You workshopped it. She didn't deny it. The fact that she didn't deny it was its own kind of admission. It is my wedding day, she said, and her voice shifted, softer, an appeal to something older than our argument, to some basic sister contract she assumed was still in effect. I know, I said, and I want to be there, genuinely. But if you want me standing beside you today, you'll apologize, in front of Derek and Frank and Mom, publicly, for what you actually did. Brianna went rigid. Absolutely not. Then I won't be your bridesmaid. The silence stretched. I watched her face cycle through several things in rapid succession. Disbelief, anger, the beginning of a counter-argument, something that might have been real hurt underneath all of it. I'd spent 30 years learning to read Brianna's face. I knew all the versions. What I saw, buried under everything else, looked like someone who had done the math and didn't like the answer. Then her phone buzzed. She looked down at the screen, and I watched the blood drain from her face. It's Derek, she whispered. What does he say? She was quiet for a moment, reading. Her eyes moved across the screen twice, once fast, once slow. When she finally looked up, the last traces of the rehearsal dinner's Brianna were gone. The smile that had owned the room, the ease, the certainty that things would arrange themselves around her if she just performed confidently enough. Gone. He wants to meet before the ceremony, she said quietly. Just you? She shook her head. He wants Frank there too. Fate. I found out what happened in that meeting from 3 sources: Derek, Frank, and eventually Brianna herself. About 6 weeks later, in a conversation I'll get to, Derek had spent most of the night talking to his uncle. Frank Whitmore, lieutenant commander, retired, 23 years as a Navy corpsman, had served with men and women who'd earned names like the one Brianna had just turned into a punchline. He'd watched that name stripped of its weight in front of 30 people, and he'd sat with Derek for 2 hours and explained, carefully and without dramatics, what he'd seen in me when I'd said that word. He'd seen someone who'd learned to hold still when everything was moving. He'd seen someone who'd been asked to laugh along and hadn't. He'd seen the second part of the question that Brianna never asked. Not what is your nickname, but what did you do to earn it? Derek, for his part, had been asking himself a different question all night. He'd known about Brianna's instinct to perform. He'd thought it was charm. He'd thought the edge of it, the way she sometimes got when she had an audience, was just high spirits, just the version of herself that came out when she was excited and happy and feeling good. He was reconsidering whether plan to humiliate her sister and then blamed her sister for the consequences was still within the range of high spirits. When he texted her that morning, he asked her to come to breakfast, just them and Frank. I know what she walked into because Derek told me later, carefully and without editorializing. Frank had one question for her. He asked it before she'd finished sitting down. When Monica said no to you last week, Frank said, what did you think she meant? Brianna didn't answer right away. I thought she was being oversensitive, she finally said. About a name she earned, Frank said. About a joke. Frank looked at her for a long time. I've known a lot of people who use that word, he said. Joke. It's remarkable how much ground it's expected to cover. Derek said Brianna had started to cry then. Real crying. Not the kind she deployed in arguments, the strategic kind, but the kind that comes when someone who has been very certain for a very long time encounters something immovable. Frank didn't comfort her. He let her sit with it. Then he said, there's a version of this marriage marriage that works, but it requires you to decide whether your husband gets to have a family you haven't approved, and whether your sister gets to have a life you haven't edited. Brianna wiped her eyes. What if I can't do that? She said. Then you find that out now, Frank said, instead of in 5 years. No, the wedding happened. I want to be clear about that because I think part of you, the part that came here wanting a blow-up, a canceled wedding, a disaster, might be bracing for something else. The wedding happened. Brianna walked down the aisle. She was beautiful. Derek was crying before she was halfway there. The good kind of crying. The kind that makes everyone else in the room realize this is real. I stood in my place. Second bridesmaid. Green dress, nude heels, small bouquet of white ranunculus. But before we'd gone to the venue, before hair and makeup and buttonholes and all the choreography of the day, Brianna had knocked on my hotel room door a second time. 7:48 a.m. I know, because I'd never gone back to sleep. She was still in the robe. No more makeup attempt. Her eyes were red. Can I come in? She said. I stepped back from the door. She sat on the edge of the bed. I sat in the chair by the window. We were quiet for a moment. The kind of quiet that's been a long time building. The kind that has weight to it. I planned it, she said. You were right. I thought it would be funny, and I thought you'd just laugh along because that's what you do. That's what you've always done. I didn't say anything. And I knew you'd said no, she said. I knew that, and I did it anyway because I thought. She stopped. I thought the room laughing would make it fine. I thought that if enough people laughed, then it couldn't be mean. It was just a joke, and you'd have to let it go. She looked at her hands. I've been doing that my whole life, she said, getting people to laugh so I don't have to be accountable. I thought about all the versions of this conversation we'd never had. All the years of let it pass. Monica, and you're so sensitive. Monica, and she didn't mean it. Monica, all the corners I'd been backed into and then blamed for inhabiting. I know, I said. I'm sorry, she said. Not if you felt. I'm sorry for what I did. It was, her voice wavered. It was cruel and it was premeditated. And I'm sorry. The room was very quiet. Outside, the fountain in the courtyard. Okay, I said. Okay, it doesn't fix everything, I said. We've got years of this behind us, and one conversation doesn't fix years, but it's a start. She nodded. Frank asked Derek something this morning, she said. He asked if Derek thought I could change. What did Derek say? He said he thought I could, if I wanted to. She looked up. He said the question was whether I wanted to. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, the way you sometimes can't when you're inside the old patterns, inside the grooves of who you've always been to each other. She looked exhausted and younger than she had in years, and more like herself than she'd been in that white dress with the champagne glass, which sounds like a contradiction, but isn't. Do you? I said. Want to? She was quiet for a long time. I think so, she said. I think I've just... She stopped again. I got very good at a version of myself that I don't think I actually like. X. I have to tell you about Frank because this story isn't complete without him. After the reception, after the first dances and the toasts and the cake and the whole long beautiful afternoon, I found him sitting outside on the venue's back terrace, a glass of water, watching the sun do something extravagant over the hills. I sat next to him. We were quiet for a while, the kind of quiet that doesn't need to be filled. Thank you, I said eventually. For last night, he waved it off the way older men do, a small, dismissive gesture that means don't mention it, but also somehow means of course. What was her name? I said. The woman you mentioned, Catherine Adler. Katie. He smiled just slightly. She'd hate Catherine. What happened to her? Retired in '89, lives in Pensacola, has about 9 grandchildren and a feud with her HOA about the color of her fence. He looked at me sideways. She's fine. She turned out fine. I thought about that. A hospital corpsman second class from 1978, flooding compartment off the coast of Okinawa, 40 plus years and 9 grandchildren and an HOA dispute. Did you keep in touch? I said. Christmas cards. He looked back at the sunset. Some things you don't let go of, not because they haunt you, because they matter. We sat for a while longer. You moved like her, he said. Last night, when everything went sideways, the way you held still, he paused. That's not nothing. No, I said. It's not. He nodded. We watched the sun go down. Epilogue. 6 weeks after the wedding, Brianna called me on a Tuesday evening. Not a text, an actual call, which in our family was reserved for emergencies or apparently something like this. She said she'd started seeing a therapist, Dr. Amanda Greco. She said the name deliberately, like she was trying to make herself accountable to it. She said she'd spent the first 2 sessions mostly crying about our childhood, and Dr. Greco had told her that the humor she'd weaponized her whole life was a coping mechanism that had calcified into a weapon, and that she'd spent so long getting people to laugh that she'd forgotten how to get them to trust her instead. She asked me when I stopped trusting her, Brianna said. What did you say? I said I wasn't sure I'd ever started. A pause. She said that was the most honest thing I'd said in 2 sessions. I didn't say anything. I don't know how to do this, Brianna said. She searched for the word, the version where I actually tell you what's going on, where I don't make it a performance. I know, I said. Me neither. We never learned how. Mom was useless on that front. Yeah, a long pause. Comfortable though. Newer than our usual silences. Will you teach me? She said. How to do the... She almost laughed. God, this sounds absurd, but how to hold still, the way you did at the rehearsal dinner. I thought about Marcus Webb and his breakfast burrito. Thought about the flight deck of the Eisenhower, the wind, the noise, the controlled choreography of extraordinary danger made routine by practice. I thought about a woman named Katie Adler, flooding compartment, Okinawa, 1978, who turned out fine. Yeah, I said, I can do that. She didn't stop being my sister. She's still working on stopping being the version of herself she learned to survive with. Frank Whitmore sent me a Christmas card in December. Inside, he'd written one line: "Some currents leave marks on the seafloor. That's not damage. That's evidence of